The wind howled through the empty alley, but something felt different tonight. Michael walked down the path, oblivious to the creeping darkness, until a flicker of movement caught his eye. A figure, pale, lifeless, stood in the shadows. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but the moment he turned his back, it was gone. Yet the air grew colder, the silence more suffocating, and then came the whisper. "Michael." What was it? A nightmare? Or something far more sinister? Watch until the end to uncover the horrifying truth. Something is lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to claim its next victim. Will Michael survive the night? Or will he be swallowed by the darkness forever? You won't believe what happens next. The night was still, the air thick with an eerie silence. Michael walked down the narrow alley, his footsteps cautious. His heart raced, and a strange unease crawled over him. Something wasn't right. His body felt it before his mind could comprehend. The wind whispered around him, like a warning. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, closing in. He quickened his pace, trying to dismiss the creeping fear. But the alley seemed to narrow with every step he took. He wasn't alone. He knew it. And then, from the corner of his eye, he saw it, a figure. Pale, lifeless, standing motionless against the wall. His heart skipped a beat. He froze. The figure didn't blink, didn't move. It was as if it was waiting for him. He turned away, hoping it was just his imagination. But when he glanced back, it was gone. His breath hitched. The alley was empty, but the oppressive silence deepened. It felt as though the shadows themselves were closing in, tightening around him. He looked over his shoulder, his pulse quickening. Was he being followed? Watched? Suddenly, the whisper came, soft, chilling. "Michael." His breath caught in his throat. The voice came from behind him. He spun around, but there was no one there. Only darkness. His heart pounded in his chest as he looked frantically around. He was alone, but the presence of something malevolent lingered. The temperature dropped. His breath turned to mist in the cold air. The shadows seemed to stretch even further, suffocating him. He took a step forward, but his body felt frozen, as if the very ground beneath him was holding him in place. Then, through the dim light, he saw it again, the figure. This time, closer. Its pale face, twisted in a grotesque expression, stared at him from the shadows. Its eyes, black holes devoid of any life, locked onto his. Michael's body went rigid with fear. He couldn't move. The figure didn't speak, but the silence around him screamed. And then, the voice came again. It wasn't a whisper this time. It was loud, commanding. "Come closer." Michael didn't want to. Every part of him screamed to run, but his body refused to obey. He was drawn to it, unable to resist. His feet moved on their own accord, slow and deliberate, each step heavier than the last. The figure reached out, its hand outstretched, fingers long and cold. He felt its touch before it even made contact, a chill that froze his skin. The figure's fingers brushed his arm, sending a jolt of icy terror through him. "Too late," the figure hissed. A sharp, icy pain shot through Michael's chest, and everything went black. When Michael awoke, he was lying on the cold ground, gasping for air. His body was drenched in sweat, his pulse pounding. The alley was silent, empty. Had it all been a nightmare? He sat up, dizzy, and looked around. But there was nothing. No figure, no whisper, just the deep, unnerving silence. He tried to rise to his feet, but his legs felt weak. As he stood, the world around him seemed to distort. His vision blurred, and a ringing in his ears drowned out the quiet. And then, from the corner of his eye, he saw it again. The figure. It stood before him, closer than ever, grinning. A twisted, cold grin. Michael's blood ran cold as he looked into its dark eyes, eyes that held nothing but emptiness. "You're mine," the figure said, its voice a cold, guttural whisper. And with those words, the darkness closed in on Michael. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't scream. The shadows consumed him, swallowing him whole. The alley fell silent again, as if nothing had ever happened. But somewhere, hidden in the dark, the figure waited. It always waited for the next soul to wander too far into its reach.